All right, so I am going to give just a quick rundown of unusual whales and how I use unusual whales to find trades, both intraday and when I'm doing my analysis, in pre-market before the market opens and stuff like that. Um, if this is your first time on the Kane Capital YouTube channel, definitely throw us a subscribe, like this video, make sure to comment. We're going to be posting a lot more educational content on this channel going forward. And we hope that it helps you find success in your trading and ultimately reach profitability with us and the rest of the guys in Discord. So make sure you like, subscribe, all that good jazz. But let's get into it. Unusual whales, really powerful tool. The Unusual Whales software is essentially an options tool that allows you to see the flow of options, institutional orders, retail orders, everything aggregated into one place for you so that you can essentially see exactly where the flow is going, see where the money is, see where the money's leaving in the market, see where the money's going to. And that enables you to essentially identify these patterns where the money is going and essentially use that to your advantage to jump on the right side of the trade, right? All right, so once you get into the platform, which looks something like this, you're essentially started out on the flow tab, which is the primary tab that I use personally. And it's definitely it's essentially just going to give you all of this options data information in the market, right? And so here you'll have the time of the order, the ticker, and whatnot, the buy or sell side, the strike, whether it was a call or put, the options expiration, what price the underlying asset was at, right? Here on the bid and ask, will show you the bid and ask for that particular contract at that time, at the time of the purchase, right? The spot is going to show you what they paid for it in between the bid and the ask. The size, obviously, is the size of how many contracts were purchased. Premium, which is just the spot multiplied times the size. And then open interest and volume, right? We'll have some flags over here, sweep. I see cross sometimes, floor sometimes, which is essentially just, somebody executed on the floor. A sweep is a large order where like the brokers were split up into multiple parts. So they'll have that as well. And then we'll have tags over here on the right. The obvious green and red for the bullish and bearish directional of the underlying bet that was made. And then they'll have some more tags over here, ask side, bid side, stuff like that, to help you further identify options contracts that may be of interest to you, right? And so that is the flow tab, essentially the one that, so that's the flow tab. That's essentially where I am most of the time. They have an options profit calculator here that I don't necessarily use. They do have alerts on unusual whales. If you are looking for alerts, I think what they do is they just aggregate some of their data using their own softwares and algorithms, and they'll help you guys essentially identify these trades of interest that you may want to take right along with. And so they do have this here as well. Again, not something that I personally use, but I know that a bunch of people like to follow along with some of these unusual whales alerts. We have the search tool, extras obviously in support if you guys ever need help. This search tool is something that I use actually pretty often. It allows you to search for any ticker and pretty much find the information on that ticker that you'll need for the day. And so they'll usually have things like general options flow. They'll have some company specific data, some financials. They'll have some insider purchases and whatnot. They have flow for that specific day, historical flow, dark pool flow. And so all of that can be found using the search tool. And then you can search for, whatever stock it is that you're looking for and pretty much find out exactly anything that you might need to know, right? So I think that a good way to break this down would be to just run through how I personally use unusual whales to find trades, right? And so I'll start with when I'm doing, my homework for the previous day, or if I'm in pre-market or something like that, and I'm preparing for the next day of trading, I'll kind of show you guys what that looks like. So usually for that, I will be in the search tab again here. I've already got my watch list of stocks that I want, and I usually will, look at technical setups first, right? I usually check out the chart, see if I like it, see if it looks bullish, and then I'll come into unusual whales and do a little bit more digging to kind of find some confirmation for the plays that I've already picked out, essentially, right? And so we'll use Apple as an example. You type in Apple up here, and it'll bring you to the Apple Whale View link, and you'll get this chart right here, right? And so they've inserted Trading View in here for you just for some quick technical analysis. Really awesome that they've done that for you already, right? And then you can come down here and you'll essentially get a lot of the details on Apple that you might need, insider trades, all of that good stuff. And then this is essentially just, their alerts that they have, any recent alerts that they might have called out on Apple in the previous days. What I'll do is I'll come over here to Apple Flow, and then I will come over here to see today's Apple breakdown, right? So this is after market has closed, and this is me doing some research for the next day, checking out the flow for the day, right? And so what this will do is essentially give you a breakdown of how Apple's flow went for that day, broken into different size orders, right? So up here, you're at the top, you can see that 78% of the trades today were calls. So this is on a Sunday, so this would be for Friday, right? 78% of Friday's activity was in calls, 78% of the number of calls relative to puts. Same thing here at the volume, pretty much 75%. This is where the premium went, how much of the premium overall today spent on Apple options went to calls. So that's 90%. Ask first bid side. So the ask side is essentially an aggressive bet. If you're buying on the ask, right, that's an aggressive bet. And then selling on the bid is a pretty bearish bet. And so usually these two tabs will be pretty similar because this is bullish versus bearish premium. And this will, like I just said, it'll kind of break down for you. Are people buying calls on the bid? Are people buying puts on the, or are people buying puts on the bid, right? And they're trying to decipher essentially if people are being aggressive with their bets, whichever way they think they're going to go. Are people being aggressive, or are people rushing to get out of the stock? And so this is primarily what I'm focused on. I want to see, are people making aggressive bets? Are people getting rid of their contracts because they think that a dip is coming or something like that? So this is primarily where I'm looking. You can look at all of this other stuff, but just keep in mind that if you see 75% calls traded to puts here, that's not necessarily bullish. People can be selling calls, which is a bearish bet. You can be selling a lot of puts, which is a bullish bet. And so the volume and the number of calls to puts is not always super relevant to me, just because I know that some of those things are going on under the surface, right? Going a little further, again, you can see the breakdown. It'll break this down for you, this exact same chart, for options orders that were less than $1,000. So this will aggregate all of that data. Options orders that were less than 5,000 here, and then 15,000 they have, and then 30,000. So I'm just taking a brief look at this before, after I've already gathered my analysis on the stock, essentially. And then you also, another cool thing is that they'll tell you what expiration date and what strike is being targeted in most of this buying, right? And so you can see that for the $30,000 orders that are at least $30,000, we've got 64% bullish premium, and they're targeting the 11/26 strike, which is today is, I believe, the 20th or the 21st. So that would be this week. Essentially you can see that most of these options are being targeted for this week. So pretty short dated buying. And then we have some more out in 2023, right? So that is also of interest. So this is essentially my gauge for what has happened in the most recent day of options trading. If I want to see a little bit more historical data, let's say that, today's a Sunday, so I will be looking out, a little bit further into the week, and I want to say, okay, what type of flow is there? Has there been all of last week, not just Friday, but all of last week for this week's trading, essentially? And so what I can do is I can go to, and I believe that this is actually a new tool they add. You go to a new tool that they just added. You go to the historical flow tab. And what you can do is you can actually see they'll have a link to you here of all of the options data from the previous days, right? So if I wanted to check it out for Thursday, I would click here, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, all of last week. It'll allow me to go in and essentially see where the premiums are at. You can also see over here, they'll break it down for you, how much of it was bullish, how much of it was bearish, the put to call ratio on the specific days, and things like that. And so I like to use this in particular just to get a feel of, okay, there's been some pretty bullish days that we've had leading up into the end of the week. In particular, Monday actually started the week as bearish, and then you can see that the premiums actually get a little bit more aggressive, more call buying into the end of the week, which actually bodes well for Apple this week, in my opinion. Okay, so now that I've checked that out, I'll also go ahead and check out the flow tab for Apple. And what you can do is you can set your filters on the left. Click this filters button here, right? And it'll bring up all of these different types of filters that you can put in and essentially break down what you're trying to look at, right? One of the main things that I've heard from people in Discord who are new to unusual whales is that it's confusing, right? They're not exactly sure what they're looking at. They're not exactly sure what they should be looking for. And I think that actually happens to a lot of people in the platform. Can be a little bit intimidating. And I actually, when I first joined, that was kind of what happened to me, right? I joined and I was really like, I was kind of all over the place. It seems like you're overwhelmed with information, the sea of information that they have. And really, it's an extremely powerful tool if you know what you're looking for, right? If you know exactly what it is that you're trying to find, right? And so you can use these filters to essentially narrow down exactly what it is that you're looking at instead of just kind of guessing based off of all of this information. So obviously, again, if we were just talking about Apple, first thing I'll do is I'll put in the ticker that I want to see the flow for. So that is Apple up here. You can then select a time range right below that. And so what I'll do is, if this is the 21st today, and I want to take a look at the flow from last week, I'll select the 15th to the 19th and hit apply. And this should essentially show me all options contracts that were bought between the 15th and the 19th. There's obviously going to be millions and millions of contracts that were purchased, so it can't show you everything. And actually right here, it'll give you the amount that you want that will be displayed per page. I always put that at 250 just so I can get as much data as possible. Okay, so this is the filters that we've got on right now from those previous 15th to the 19th. But this, in my opinion, still doesn't narrow it down enough, right? I want to see big, large orders that are going through, because that is how you find these whales. If you see massive large orders, particularly repeat bets concentrated around a particular strike, concentrated around a particular expiration, you can actually see that you'll get a better picture of what it is that the whales are betting on and where they're expecting to see Apple, in this case, go in the near future, right? And so what else I'll do is I'll go to premium range. I usually set this, it depends. I usually try and set this to just about 20 to 25,000. For bigger stocks like Apple that are just so massive, they have so much activity going on each day, you're actually probably gonna have to increase that, right? So for Apple, I would go as high as 100, 150 to 200,000, particularly if you're looking at such a large range from Monday to Friday, right? So let's go ahead and type in 100,000 here, and that'll cut out any options order in which the premium right here was less than 100,000, right? So this is only showing me Apple options contracts that were purchased for more than 100,000 in premium, right? And as we scroll down, you can see on the left here, this doesn't even encompass all of Friday, right? This is still, it looks like when we get to the bottom, we're at 12:05. So this is only the last 4 hours of the day in Apple. And like you can see, you have some orders here for 1 million, 1.2 million, $2 million. These are some massive orders that are going through. And so you're not going to be able to see all of that information, particularly for Apple, because there's just so much call buying, right? And so that's where I'll actually sometimes come back here, and if I'm looking at such a large range, I'll add another zero, put in a million. So these are only options contracts in which the premium was more than $1 million. And you can see now we actually get down into Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, because there are less $1 million orders being made. And so let's go ahead and I'll actually just go back to 100,000. Let's just look at Fridays, right? The size range I usually try not to bother with because the premium is pretty much taking care of that. But if you wanted to, you could check the spot range if you were looking for, options contracts that were under $1, let's say, and you didn't really want to spend more than $1 on your options contract, you could narrow it down by that as well. I do ask only because I want to see aggressive bets. Again, if somebody's buying something on the ask, especially such a large order, that usually means an aggressive bullish bet, right? That's usually what that means to me. And so I'll make sure to put that in. Expiration, I don't usually touch, but I do touch the DTE, right? So I want to see options that are near dated. I want to see people making aggressive near dated bullish bets on stocks. And so I'll usually limit my DTE to 30, right? You can do 30, 60, whatever range you want to look at. I try and limit it to 30. And all these things are just going to narrow down this massive sea of information just so that it becomes a little bit more containable and digestible, right? So I've got 30 as my DTE range here. And then the one last thing that I'll do is I will click the add of the money to make sure that I'm looking at people who are making directional bets, not some of these massive in the money hedges that you'll see throughout the day. I want to see aggressive bets that are directional. So I'm going to go ahead and take the add of the money contracts. So now that I've got all my filters in, which are again, my 100,000 premium, ask only, 30 days to expiration range, and my out of the money only contracts here, I will go ahead and take a look at the flow and just see, what strikes are being targeted, what options contracts are being purchased per my filters that may be of interest to me, right? So I see actually a ton of action around the 1217s here. You can see them spread around a couple of different strikes. So that will be interesting to me. I go ahead and I just take a look at some of these flow. To me, I see a ton of a ton of bullish flow rather here on Wednesday. It looks like, or this is actually Thursday, a ton of bullish flow here on Thursday, and even on Friday, even more bullish flow. Some puts into the close there, but mostly bullish in my opinion. If you hit the escape button, what it'll do is it'll go ahead and aggregate all this information for you and essentially just show you a chart of what you're looking at. And so this is going to be based off of those filters that you have there on your left, right? So you can see I've got about 67% bullish premium, which in my opinion is good. And we've got 72%. Usually anything above 60% is bullish for me. So if I'm looking for, I look at the chart, I think the Apple's going to go up this week. I come into my unusual whales, I'm looking to see at least 60% bullish flow. And then I'll go deeper. I take a deeper dive into the flow here and see exactly what calls and what expirations rather, and what strikes are being targeted, right, by the whales. And so that's how I'll use it in pre-market or at night while I'm essentially looking for stocks for that next week or day, right? You can also use unusual whales flow for intraday, right? Intraday trading. I actually will use the exact same filters. Again, for Apple, you may want to increase the premium range because it's just such a liquid stock and there's so much premium going in and out all the time. But for smaller stocks, you can usually stick to like 20,000, 25,000 range, 10,000 if it's really not that big of a stock and you don't have a ton of activity in it. Maybe 10,000 would suit you better. So just play around with the premium range until you get a nicely populated list here. So intraday, right? You can use the flow. And usually intraday, I don't have, I'll just click whatever day it is. So let's say that I was doing this on Friday. I'll click the 19th, make that my range, right? We don't have a ton of orders here. So that means that my premium might be too high, right? So I think I have 100,000 right now. Let me change it to 20,000 and see what we get. Okay, so it looks like a lot of bullish flow in the morning for Apple, as you can see, just a bullish premium pouring in, particularly centered around the 1217s and the 1126s, even a little bit of same day action here, right? So these are some of the things that I would have up intraday while I'm trading. If I have Apple up in my chart, I have a support level that I want to get in at. I'll take a quick look at the flow and just take a look at it. If I see that there's so many bullish orders going in, that's going to make me feel more confident about taking my long trade, right? If I'm already in a trade and maybe Apple is not doing what I expected, and I come and I check the flow and I see just constant bullish orders, that to me means that the stock is going to move soon. Maybe I was a little bit early, but that gives me a little bit more conviction in my plays and allows me to hold, when I may be down 10, 20%. And I tell myself, I think that the chart says bullish, the flow says bullish. That's going to give me a little bit more conviction to hold the trade, right? Here's a perfect example of pretty much how I would use unusual whales options flow intraday, right? And we're going to go ahead and use an example of a trade that I actually took on the 18th. I added the Apple 155 calls that were expiring the next day on the 19th. And I don't know, the chart just looked good. During the day, actually, we had a dip earlier and Apple was showing some really nice relative strength, which had interested me. So I was already interested in the stock, and I did not take the purchase directly off of what I saw on unusual whales. It was just a personal bet that I was taking, right? And I remember actually thinking to myself, like, I might just want to cut this for a small loss. Maybe I was just wrong. I broke my most recent support. It doesn't look good. I said, what, let me go ahead and check the usual whales first and just see what the options look like. And so I went ahead and I went in with my usual settings, 50,000 premium since Apple is a larger stock. And I actually, if I'm trading intraday, I'll usually select my, the expirations that I want to filter out. I want to see near dated call buying. I want to see aggressive bets on stocks that are going to move and move soon, right? And so I actually have the 1119, the 1126, and the 12.3, the next three options expiration dates. So I selected for those. And as you can see, this is filtered out for the 18th. On the 18th, what I would have seen here, remember I added these at about 10:40. So here's what it would have looked like prior to that. We have a lot of, really bullish bets, some not deep in the money, but fairly, I think the stock was trading at like 154. These are at 140, 152.5. A lot of times these big orders will be done not necessarily out of the money, but in the money, because it allows them to buy more contracts, right? If you have $100,000 to spend, it's going to be easier to get into a contract that's worth $2 than a contract that's worth 50 cents, because you just have to buy more of the out of the money contracts. So this is what, if you're trying to send a large order, sometimes this is what whales would do. They'll buy as close to the money as possible, but maybe a little bit in the money to mitigate some of that risk. And they're also less volatile contracts in general. So this is what that would have looked like. We have a ton of just bullish activity here, as you can see, targeting the 150s. All of this I would have seen, I actually did see, and that gave me a little bit of conviction to hold the trade, right? There's a lot of call buying, huge size. You can see 120, 200,000, 1.3 million. So you see a lot of call buying. It's pretty substantial size for near dated contracts. To me, that's a bullish sign. And that made me comfortable, taking the risk. All of this flow would have come in during that time. I would have seen all of this flow coming in into the 150s, pouring in for the 1126s, right? And then what happens at about 12 o'clock is some news comes out that Apple is actually closer than they believed to making their electric vehicle, right? Which is, they've been talking about this for years. And now it looks like they've got a pretty good shot at actually getting it done, and getting it done sooner than anticipated. And so obviously the stock just absolutely rips on that news. And again, all the while from 11:30 to 12 o'clock, I'm checking the flow and I'm seeing that it's not stopping, right? You can see these massive orders, 160,000, 250,000, 210,000, all coming in before that alert, before that, not the alert, but before the press release that Apple is, closer than anticipated to the release of their electric vehicle, right? That sends the stock. Obviously, somebody knew something was going to go on, and that sends the stock, up at least 2-3 points into the end of the day. Those contracts wound up, going up, I want to say, like 300 to 400%. And then the next day, obviously on Friday, Apple had another great day. Those contracts hit, I want to say 1,200%, or something absurd like that. So that's just a way that I use unusual whales, to not to necessarily enter and exit positions, but more to add conviction to my trades, right? Again, one of the hardest things as a trader is not only finding a good entry, but when you don't necessarily nail the bottom or nail the entry, knowing when to get out and knowing when to hold and having that conviction in the play in the first place. And I think that unusual whales, works wonders for that conviction aspect of trading. So this is one last example of how I used unusual whales actually intraday to find the trade, as opposed to just using it for a conviction. It was on QS. I used the trade on, I think it was on the 11th. I took this trade. Yes. And I actually missed this morning rip, right? The stock was up. This is the wrong tool. The stock was up. What is it? It looks like, 12% on the day at one point, 10-12%. And so absolute massive day on QS. I did miss the trade. I didn't want to FOMO in, but I just let it ride. And I just kept my eye on it throughout the entire day. Towards the middle of the day here, around 12 o'clock, I actually began to look at, maybe taking a swing trade into the next day, for some 40 calls. And I went into unusual whales. I already like the setup. We have this 40 break coming, over 40. I knew that we had room to 45. And so, all of those things combined, I was already ready to take this trade, right? And I said, you know what? Before I take this trade, I'm just going to go ahead and check unusual whales, check the flow into the end of the day. The stock's already up 10%. Is this something that people are trying to get rid of, or are people betting on this rally to continue, right? So I went ahead to unusual whales. Let's type in QS. That's QSA, QS. Okay, and we want to go to, for the time, it was Thursday, right? So I'm going to go ahead to Thursday the 11th and hit apply. My range, again, remember how I was saying that for smaller stocks, you may want to adjust your premium range because, a $50,000 bet in Apple, those are happening every 2 seconds, whereas QS, a smaller name, may not be getting as much attention. So what I'll do is I'll adjust my premium accordingly. So we're at about 20,000 here. Again, ask only. I want to see aggressive bets, and I have my expiration set for the 19th. But what I'll do is I'll select them all, and then I'll go. I don't think I can really change the DT range since it happened in the past. So I'll just leave it at that. $20,000 bets on the ask side for QS throughout the day. And here, as you can see, the entire day, we just have tons and tons of bullish bets being made in QS all throughout the morning. Again, the stock was up 12%, so this makes sense. Tons of bullish activity. I started looking at the stock a little bit closer to the afternoon, so I was seeing a ton of activity going on, particularly in the December strike around 40. I saw that 40 was being targeted heavily by these options buyers, and so that made me feel comfortable that, especially towards the end of the day, even after the rally had stopped, you can see here into the close, we just have tons of 40 calls, 50 calls going out for QS. And so that, to me, signaled that, the rally was not done and that we could definitely continue to see a push. And so I got in to some calls, again, around 50 cents, I want to say. That might have been 40. And it was actually a lotto swing trade because they were the next day's expiration. They were expiring on the 12th, bought them on the 11th. So it was more of a lotto trade, to be honest. And I entered as anticipated. They rallied into the end of the day, and I actually sold half of my calls there, right? And thank God that I did because the next day it didn't work out, but I was able to sell most of the calls for about 50% gain. So that's pretty much it. We'll definitely do another one of these videos going forward, just to kind of show you guys a little bit more about how we're using unusual whales. I'm trying to get some of the other guys in the Discord to hop on it. It's a super powerful tool. I'm actually going to have a referral code in the Discord. You'll be able to just click it, and you can use that referral code on unusual whales to save yourself a little bit of money. And that'll be for everybody in the Discord. Our members will go ahead and get that up probably today or tomorrow. All right, so make sure that you guys, hopefully you guys like the video. Make sure that you subscribe, like, leave me a comment, let me know where I could have done better, and if you guys want to see more unusual whales content in the future.